Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, the direct route to PMP exam success. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, where we accompany you on the road to becoming a PMP certified project manager. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. The plan cost management process is the focus of this lesson, and it's the first process in the project cost management knowledge area. The output of this process is the cost management plan, a subsidiary plan to the project management plan. It provides guidance and direction for how all project costs and associated activities will be managed throughout the project. In particular, in the lesson, we will discuss the definition of what it means to plan cost management, review the process details, describe inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs, as we always do. We'll focus on the cost management plan and its contents, and we cover some key points on cost performance measurement and earned value management. Let us start with the definition of the cost management knowledge area. It includes the processes involved in planning, estimating, budgeting, financing and funding, managing and controlling costs so that the project can be completed within the approved budget. The first bullet on the previous slide was that we need to plan in cost management. So that means that the first of our four processes is obviously plan cost management. It is the process that establishes the policies, procedures, and documentation for planning, managing, expending, and controlling project costs. We're just going to define how are we going to manage all the money that we are about to spend. Then, in our second process, we're going to estimate cost. That is the process of developing an approximation of the monetary resources needed to complete project activities. Then we're going to move on and we are going to determine a budget. That's the process of aggregating the estimated costs of individual activities or work packages to establish an authorized cost baseline. And now that we have this authorized cost baseline and people start working and money is being expended, of course we want to control our costs as well. And this is the process of monitoring the status of the project to update the project costs and managing changes to the cost baseline. And here is how these four processes fall within the process groups. Important to note, most of what we do is actually planning. In our focus right now in this lesson, we're going to plan how we're going to manage our cost overall. In the next lesson, you will learn how are we going to estimate how much it is actually going to cost and how are we going to budget this. How and when is it going to be spent is the third lesson. And then finally, how to control all of this is defined and discussed in the lesson on control costs, where we move from the planning process group into the monitoring and controlling process group. But now, plan cost management. And the main concept that you should remember in this process is that we plan how to approach and execute cost management activities. Planning is a foundational step in cost management, just as it is in other project management knowledge areas. Project managers know they must stay alert and focused on project costs throughout the project, but cost management planning needs to occur early. This is when they have the greatest influence over cost. It is during planning where the approach is determined as how to best estimate, budget, report, manage, and control your project cost. At planning, different options for tools and techniques are considered, and the appropriate ones are selected for the project. And the decision on the approach and methods around handling the cost are then finally documented in the cost management plan. let's take our usual quick glance into the figures of the PMBOK guide, the ITTO overview that we have here. And as you can see, there are 4 inputs, 3 tools and techniques, and luckily for us, only 1 output of this process. Why these 4 are the inputs for planning, cost management, and how to use expert judgment, analytical techniques, and meetings to create the cost management plan. It's actually quite intuitive, and once you've seen this lesson, you're going to go, ah, yeah, it's that easy. So let's take a closer look at the ITTOs. So as we have just seen, we have 4 inputs here to this process. Let's see if we can identify together where they actually come from. Which other processes give these inputs to us? First of all, we have the project management plan. Well, there is a process out there called develop project management plan, and that's where it comes from. Second, we have the project charter. Well, believe it or not, there is a process out there that is called develop project charter. And then we have the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets. And no, there are no processes out there like develop EEF or develop OPA. That doesn't exist. These actually come from our surroundings, from the enterprise and from the organization itself. So our first input, the project management plan, is an input because it has components which contain information that impacts planning of cost management. For example, there is the scope baseline. This defines the scope of the work to be done. The scope is described at a high level in the scope statement, but also defined in a more granular level through the hierarchical decomposition in the WBS and the associated WBS dictionary. Then we have the schedule baseline. The schedule baseline impacts the timing of costs. As such, it influences cost estimation. For example, if the schedule dictates a long duration and a very distant planning horizon, this would increase the uncertainty in cost estimates. This might influence the choice of estimation technique or level of accuracy that is required for your estimates. And you'll also find other information in the project management plan, like decisions on how cost-related schedules, risk communications, and others are to be handled. And once again, the project management plan comes to us from the Develop Project Management Plan process under Project Integration Management. The project charter was our second input, and according to the PMBOK guide definition, the project charter is a document issued by the project initiator or sponsor that formally authorizes the existence of a project and provides the project manager with the authority to apply organizational resources to project activities. In other words, spend money. So that's why it's an input here. The project charter has a summary budget in it, which is used as the basis for detailed project cost estimates later on. It also has defined project approval requirements. This impacts how project costs are to be managed. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, this comes to us from the Develop Project Charter process, again from Project Integration Management. There are 4 enterprise environmental factors that are worth noting when it comes to costing. First of all, market conditions. They describe current products and services that are available in the market. You need to understand the availability and cost for the resources that may need to be procured for the project. Then we have published commercial information. They contain resource rates and pricing. For example, there are databases which track rates and price lists for labor by skill and other materials and equipment that you may need to procure. And then we also have the Project Management Information System, the PMIS. As defined by the PMBOK guide, these are information systems consisting of tools and techniques used to gather, integrate and disseminate the outputs of project management processes. Since cost management is such a fundamental process, many project management information systems have features to support exactly that. So the factors we have described so far, these three, they are external to the organization. However, internal factors must also be considered. How the organization is structured and its culture also impacts the cost management planning. Our final input, the organizational process assets. And some of these assets that may influence the plan cost management process are financial control procedures. These include procedures around time reporting, procurement, controls, and accounting codes. There may be financial databases internally, policies, procedures, and guidelines relating to cost estimating and to budgets, historical information, and, of course, lessons learned. Here it is worth noting that companies themselves often have certain approaches for how they manage and control costs on their projects. So you, as the project manager, have to understand these. And, of course, these are documented and defined, usually in the third bullet point that you see here: policies, procedures, guidelines, operational procedures that you have to follow on your project as you are planning cost management. The three tools and techniques for plan cost management, they should at least look and sound familiar to you. There is expert judgment, we have analytical techniques, and we have meetings. So let's get started with the expert judgment here. And according to the PMBOK guide, expert judgment is judgment provided based upon expertise in an application area, knowledge area, discipline, industry, and so on, as appropriate for the activity that is being performed. Experts drive and influence the approach to cost management for your project. They provide insight on what method or combination of methods you could use. They examine and weigh out the differences in the approaches, and ultimately, experts, they use their knowledge and experience of the company, the market, and financial methods in order to recommend the best approach for the project. Such expertise may be provided by any group or person with specialized education, knowledge, skills, experience, or training. Right now, we're still in the planning stage, and our second tool and technique, different analytical techniques and methods, must be considered in order to make the right cost management decisions. And some options include for funding, it must be decided if the project is going to be self-funded or funded with equity or debt from the outside. Or we have maybe questions surrounding financing of project resources. Different financing options need to be considered. Is it best to make it? Is it best to buy, to rent, or maybe to lease a resource? Let's also not forget that decisions on how to fund or finance resources may also affect project schedule and possibly also project risk. And in order to make these financial and funding decisions, there are a myriad of financial techniques at a project manager's, at your disposal. They are the payback period, return on investment, better known as ROI, the net present value, discounted cash flow, or the internal rate of return, IRR. But please do note that not all of these financial techniques are relevant on every project. As part of planning cost management, the techniques which are most suitable to your project requirements are selected. Organizational policies and procedure may influence this decision. However, for the PMP exam, you have to know and be able to understand and explain all 5 of these. And now you're going to tell me, oh, wait a minute, I'm not a numbers guy, I'm here to manage the project. I didn't sign up for all of this financial stuff. Well, the reality is, yes, you did sign up for some financial management, but maybe not as much as you think. When project managers come into play, some financial decisions may be out of the scope for this project, or the decisions that have already been made. For example, in a project that involves creating a product, maybe marketing has already calculated and predicted sales figures, and therefore doing that analysis is outside of the scope of the project, of what you are going to have to be leading. Or perhaps the finance department has already made projections on the product's financial performance. So depending on the nature of the project, indeed, you may not need to directly use these financial and analytical techniques yourself. These calculations and supporting documents may provide assumptions, constraints, or financial targets for your project. However, this is not always the case. It could very well be that such calculations may be part of the project. Then you as the project manager will have to apply skills that are not necessarily project management skills. Instead, apply your general management skills and techniques to address questions like, what is the internal rate of return of this product? Or what is the earned value of the work done so far on this project? And finally, the last of the tools and techniques under plan cost management is meetings. And frankly, when I look at this image here of this meeting in progress currently, I see a problem. Only 2 people have coffee and there are absolutely no snacks on the table. Well, anyway, it would be difficult to plan anything about cost management without having a meeting about it. So, what is the agenda going to be about for this meeting? Well, what else but how to manage costs throughout this project. And who should we invite? Well, the project manager and sponsor should be there, and as appropriate also project team members and stakeholders who have a role or responsibility for the aspects of project costs to be discussed. And one group of these stakeholders is, of course, our experts that we discussed just a couple of slides back under expert judgment. In these meetings, the details of the cost management plan will be discussed and developed. And that takes us to the outputs, or rather the one and only output of plan cost management, which is of course our cost management plan, a subsidiary plan of our overall project management plan. So, what is the cost management plan? According to the PMBOK guide, the cost management plan is a component of a project or program management plan that describes how cost will be planned, structured, and controlled. At its core, the cost management plan tells you how to manage the overall approach to cost management in general. It should explain how to perform steps relating to cost. For example, there may be strict rules which govern what steps need to be taken prior to spending or committing to spend money in your organization. We note here that the level of formality and detail depends on the project. It may be formal or informal. It may be highly detailed or broadly framed. You should understand the concept that an informal email may serve as the cost management plan for your project. This, of course, depends on the project. It may be sufficient for a small 2-month-long project to send an email, but would likely be inadequate for sending a crew into space and trying to manage your cost just via a quick email. Let's open up this cost management plan and take a look at the details of what we find inside of it. First of all, units of measure. Will you measure hours? What is the currency? What is the cost per unit of output? Will you measure hours per day? And how long is a day? We also have the level of precision. Would it be appropriate to round up or round your numbers down? And by how much are you allowed to round up or round down? Next, we have a level of accuracy. What range of a cost estimate would be example? For example, is plus minus 15% acceptable? Do you have to be plus minus 5%, or can you go plus minus 50%? And at this point, it's good to take a moment and note that there is an important difference between level of precision, the second item we have, and the level of accuracy, the third item. Although we sometimes use precision and accuracy interchangeably in common speech, you can see that in the context of the cost management plan, they have two very distinct meanings. Moving on to organizational procedure links. Essentially, the cost management plan has to show how project cost accounting can be done on the project. The work breakdown structure provides the framework in which work efforts and related costs are linked. And then we also have control thresholds. As costs are being monitored throughout the project, a specific action is triggered if you reach a certain threshold. For example, if costs exceed 20%, then a cost review must be conducted on a particular activity. The cost management plan also includes detail on rules of performance measurement. As part of this process and documenting the cost management plan, earned value management rules of performance are established, and the cost management plan is where these rules are then, of course, documented. It also contains reporting formats, the format, frequency, and distribution requirements for reporting. You should include that in the cost management plan. Then cost management processes such as estimation and budgeting should be described, and how we are going to go about doing and performing these. And the cost management plan may also include other details such as procedures for recording costs or how to account for currency exchange rate fluctuations. Briefly, on the previous slide, we mentioned that rules on earned value management are established and documented in the cost management plan. Earned value, highly important for the PMP exam. Let's take a moment to look at the official definition of earned value according to the PMBOK guide. It is the methodology that combines scope, schedule, and resource measurements to assess project performance and progress. And don't worry, we'll get into earned value management a lot deeper in other lessons. Okay, back to these rules of performance measurements that we have learned are part of what our cost management plan documents. What exactly are they? Well, here are 3 ideas for you what we might include. We might talk about which points in the work breakdown structure and the related control accounts that we have in there should be monitored and measured for cost. It may discuss and specify the earned value techniques to be using. For example, if we're using weighted milestones, fixed formula milestones, or percent complete on a milestone. And it may also specify specific tracking methods that we can use, and even go as deep as prescribing which earned value management equation, which formula to use. For example, what formula do we use to measure estimate at completion, because it has multiple formulas available for us to do that. So these are 3 ideas of performance measurements that can be described in the cost management plan. So what type of PMP exam sample questions do we see and find in the commercially available products? Well, the focus is on the cost management plan. What does it contain? Why is it important? You have to be familiar with the tools and the techniques, and you have to understand the types of decisions that go into all of this. For example, financing, funding, estimating methods, and so on, which are made as part of planning cost management. let's take a look at 2 sample questions. The first one, which of the following is not an example of project management estimating software? All right, answer A, cost estimating software applications. B, spreadsheets. C, simulation software. And D, the PMIS. Okay, when we look at these, one of them jumps out immediately at me because it's only an acronym, and that's PMIS there. So we have cost estimating software. Quite clearly estimating, yes. Spreadsheets, I use that basically every single day to calculate, so definitely this is calculation. Simulation software, yes, I can simulate various cost alternatives in there, but the project management information system, well, it's an I system, an information system, not a calculation system. So in fact, PMIS, that is the correct answer because it is a reporting system, not estimating software. However, there is software on the market that performs both functions. Just so for your certification examination, remember that the information system, the reporting system, and the function of calculation, of estimating, those are 2 different types of software solutions. The next sample question asks, which of the following items can be established by a cost management plan? To answer this correctly, you need to understand the contents of a cost management plan, what can be found inside of this plan. So what answers do we have? A, level of accuracy and work package. Okay. B, units of measure and quality metric. C, control thresholds and units of measure. And D, rules of performance measurement and rewards. Okay, so when I read these questions, in each question there is something that I remember from the lesson today. For example, in D, rules of performance measurement. We just looked at that just a couple of slides ago. In B, units of measure, yes. A, level of accuracy. Okay, but there's always a combination. So we have to know, if we want to answer A, level of accuracy, I'm 100% sure that's in there. But work package, we didn't talk about work package in this whole lesson, so definitely A is out. B, units of measure, yes. Quality metrics, no. We didn't talk about quality metrics just now, so that's out as well. C, control thresholds, yes, we talked about thresholds. Units of measure, yes, okay, that's an option, C. And then lastly, rules of performance measurements, and we did not talk about rewards, so D is out as well. That means C is the correct answer that we have. So the way to answer this type of question correctly is knowing what's inside of your cost management plan, and then by process of elimination figuring out which answers contain some kind of an item that is not part of your cost management plan. Let's review. In this lesson we have learned that plan cost management is foundational to cost management, and it should occur early in the project. Cost management planning is beneficial in that it gives guidance and direction to cost management. To plan cost management, you must study all the different cost management related inputs. When you begin to plan, you should consider all the prior planning and decisions already accomplished. At this point, there are important details that impact cost management contained in the project management plan and in the project charter. You should also examine the environmental factors and your organizational assets and determine which ones are relevant for your project. Use the tools and techniques of plan cost management appropriately. Involve experts, conduct meetings, and discuss and determine the most appropriate approaches and analytical techniques to better manage cost on your project. And the sole output of this process is the cost management plan. This is a subsidiary yet integrated part of the overall project management plan. It documents all the details and decisions made on how to manage costs on the project. We have now reached the end of this lesson here in the Project Management Prepcast. So Justine and I say goodbye. Well, to be precise, Justine says,
"You are the weakest link. Goodbye."
And I say, until next time.